Carolyn's favorite song, and she sang it often, was Du liebst mir ein Herzen. I think we have the story that one time she was picked up by the ambulance and she had fallen or something, and they were taking her into the hospital. The young man who was sitting with her in the back of the ambulance said, "You're German, aren't you?" And she said, "Oh yes, yeah, I'm German. Are you German?" Yes, do you sing German songs?" And she said, "I do." And she started singing Du liebst mir ein Herzen, and he joined her. And she remembered that forever. And many years later, she said, "And you know what? He joined me. He knew all the words." It made her so happy.
Du liebst mir ein Herzen, du liebst mir ein Sinn. Du machst mir viel Schmerzen, weiß nicht wie gut ich dir bin. This song means that you don't know how good they are to you, see. It wasn't very long ago, you know, when the men come here, you know, and they had to get my picture and stuff. And they wasn't funny. And then that one fellow, then he thought all the time, you know, he wanted to call different places. And so after a while, then he, I don't know what he said there, different things to me there. And so I says, "Kannst du Deutsch sprechen?" "Yes, a little," he says. And so then I says, "Well," he says, Du liebst mir mein Herzen, du liebst mir ein Sinn. Du machst mir viel Schmerzen, weiß nicht wie gut ich dir bin. "Yes," he says.
What I remember about my grandmother Caroline was that one of the things were her cookies and her applesauce cake. With my dad, Fred, we used to go down every, I think it was Sunday morning, to visit Grandma. And she was always ready with some cookies for us. She had her little house, and we would come in and visit, and she always talked to me too, even whether I was 4 or 5. She didn't just talk to my dad, she always talked to me. And I always appreciated that. I felt like I was important and an individual to her. The other thing I remember was when I was taking 4-H classes with my Aunt Leona, which lived just below Grandma. And in the evening, after the 4-H class, I would come up and stay overnight with Grandma. And it was always such a special time. It was just she and I. And even though she was still in her walker, we would do the dishes together. And then we would she would go and sit in her special chair. And I had a little step stool that I sat on next to her. And that's when I'd ask her questions about, I was interested in her life. I think I was probably about maybe 12 years old, 11 years old. And that's when I first asked her about where her family had come from. And I was kind of interested in covered wagons. And I said, did they come out in a covered wagon or where? And that's when she talked about and where this trunk that I have beside me came from too. It was a time when her mother, would be my great grandmother, she came as a child in a covered wagon, but not with the Oregon Trail group. It was a little bit later than that. And so I asked about Indians and all that kind of stuff. She had great stories about it that she remembered from her family. So it seems like Carolyn and her family must have told great stories to each other because she had so much information about her family. And just as she was telling me stories, it's great that we have this tradition from our grandmother and this tradition of storytelling and passing stories along.
One of the things that was so great about her living there, that we got to know all of the cousins a lot better than everybody else did, because every Sunday somebody came with 2 or 3 cousins, and Jerry and Marlene and Juan and Jean, and Jerry'd take us snipe hunting and stuff, and the kids, we were younger, I mean, it was something we could see every Sunday. Some relation was there.
You better explain to everybody what snipe hunting is, because most of our younger relatives won't know what snipe hunting is.
Well, they take you out behind the barn, and then they give you a sack and 2 sticks to beat, and they were going to surround the area and drive the snipes to you. But they came back to the house, and then they were in the house, I think, and folks came home, and we were still out. Then they got scared. So they had to come down quick and get us. But anyhow, no, it was just, you know, it was a farm life with family, and it just couldn't have been better. You know, you don't really know what you have until you don't have lost it.
One of my favorite stories is that I feel Grandma helped us get a very nice apartment when Dick was in dental school. We were living at Aunt Mabel's and Stoney's house, and they were coming home. So we had to find a new place to stay. We were at Mom and Dad's and checked the listing in the paper that morning, and here was one over on Skyline Boulevard. Well, Grandma was visiting that day too, so we piled everybody in the car. We've got the mother, the father, and the grandma, and we descend upon this couple who wants to rent out their guest room, guest cottage, I guess you'd say. It was a full apartment underneath the garage. So we all troop in, and I know they had a number of people they had interviewed for this apartment, but living in that close proximity, they had to be a little careful probably. So you were supposed to do yard work, so there was a way of earning a little money on the side as well as a nice place to live. And I think they were impressed that we came with the entire family, even Grandma, and we got the apartment and we lived there 2 years. Grandma helped us do that.
I remember one of the Thanksgivings, and it was this particular one was over at Uncle Joe and Aunt Emma's place, and we as kids, after having had a good dinner, we went out and went down to Uncle Joe's barn and got into the he had some apples that he had packed all for the winter, all packed in straw. And we got in those apples and not just ate 1 or 2, but he also had a cider press. And so you couldn't just have apples in a cider press and not do something with them. So we ran, by memory, I think all that we could find anyway, of his good winter apples through the cider press, and of course didn't do anything with it. We just made a big mess. But I can remember the consequences of it afterwards. We had, when they found out about it, when Dad found out about it, we had to work on the farm at Dad's place to replace those and pay for and replace those apples. And in that day and age, winter apples came at a real premium. But why kids have done something like that? It just, I guess that's just being kids. But I remember that, and that was an event over at Uncle Joe's place for Thanksgiving.
The first recollection I have is spending the night upstairs, and I have no idea where, I don't know if Paula was with me or not, but Mom and Dad weren't. I know I was we were by ourselves if we were together, and I think that had happened at least a couple of times, because I can remember spending the night up there. And then, of course, her coming to visit us in Central Oregon. And she always made a spatula, so that was always special for me. And she would darn Dad's socks. Mom always saved some, so she'd have something to do. And so, you know, with the light bulb and sit there and darn Daddy's socks. And then she made me a bunch of doll clothes and crocheted a lot of edgings for pillowcases, which I still have. I wish I had the doll clothes. But anyway, It was the bigger ones. There wasn't Barbie back then. They were just those little rubber dolls, and so and just always loving and caring. And then when I moved, graduated and moved to Portland, she liked me to call her every Monday night, and I called her every Monday night. So
What did you talk about?
anything and everything and what everybody was doing, and so that was her only conversation, because you know that she called Aunt Emma every morning and Aunt Mabel every morning and Aunt Meal every morning. So I did the night one, and so we just got to keep all in the loop.